if we really want to be successful, and this is what I teach with my clients, is like we need unconditional permission. We need to learn to live in
Love
the
that.
gray. We need to know that we can have our cake and eat it too, but also take ownership and responsibility about how much cake we're eating.
Welcome to the Mindset Mirror Connection podcast, the podcast where we debunk the eat less, move more, shrink more mentality and focus on what really matters, which includes your relationship with your body, food, self-worth, and the behaviors that align with all of those. I'm your host, Christina Hathaway, licensed therapist with specialized training in food and body obsession, certified personal trainer and nutrition coach. At the Mindset Mirror Connection podcast, we believe what you say in your mind, you see in the mirror. So let's have a conversation about that. Before we get into today's amazing episode, I want to make sure you've hit that follow button wherever you're listening to the Mindset Mirror Connection podcast. Also, if you like to listen to this pod on the go, make sure you have those downloads turned on. As always, I love a 5-star rating and review, and I want to thank you for your continued support. Now, let's get into the episode. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Mindset Mirror Connection podcast. I am so excited you took this time out for yourself to learn about something about your physical and mental health. And today you are in for a treat because I have Ben Brown. Ben Brown is the founder of Body Systems, a global health and wellness coaching program known for its revolutionary Prime Fit OS system, which has helped 15s of thousands of clients shed pounds and transform their lives. With more than over 2 decades of experience, Ben brings so much expertise. He has worked with Fortune 500 companies, the Golden State Warriors, the Arizona Diamondbacks, the Arizona Cardinals, and countless high-achieving individuals like a lot of you listening here. Armed with a dual master's degree, one in exercise and wellness, the other in clinical nutrition, coupled with his adjacent faculty role in the health and science department at Arizona State. Let's go, Sun Devils. Ben's coaching program combines the science of real world data, psychology of behavior change, which we love here, and the art of coaching to create lasting results. As a husband and a father of 3, Ben draws on his personal experience and his professional experience as well to empower others to reclaim their energy, their confidence, and their health freedom, all without the burden of restrictive diets. We love that. And sustainable habit change. Welcome, Ben. Welcome to the show.
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. I was introduced to you by my public relations gal, actually, Robin.
Oh, Robin's the best.
She really is the best. And she's in my business group, and I started following you, and I'm like, okay, yep, I need to have him on the show because, we were talking before jumping on, like it's really important to me to have individuals with not only the experience, because obviously working face to face with people is incredibly important, obviously, but the knowledge, and the fact that you have a dual master's degree in both exercise science and nutrition, like that to me is just golden. Like I'm so excited for this conversation and what you bring. So again, thank you.
Glad to be here. Excited to dig in.
Yeah. You're here in the Valley in Phoenix?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm in Phoenix since I did my master's at ASU, my first master's at ASU. I graduated in 2005.
Mm-hmm.
So 20 years in Phoenix. And then I was a few years down in Tucson for undergrad.
I saw that and I said, what made him do that? As a Sun Devil.
What?
And a Sun Devil 2 times over. My master's degree is from ASU as well. I said, why would he do that to us? But we'll let it slide.
Well, in all fairness, I mean, I was wild and I am still a wildcat through and through, despite masters at ASU and now teaching at ASU. But I don't tell my students that.
Yeah, they better. I hope they're not listening to this.
Why not make it out of class alive?
Right, exactly. Yeah, I actually saw that as well. What's interesting to me is your story and how you began, obviously, very much in the health and wellness space. Your entire career and education is built around it. And you found yourself feeling just really fatigued and your immune system was shot and you were doing the right things on paper. I'd love to start with that, your own personal story and how you began to kind of use yourself as a guinea pig and how that's come to be your program.
Yeah, well, I mean, you would probably know this better than anyone, but I think for so many of us in the health and fitness space, it's definitely a labor of love by virtue of the fact that, we kind of have these pain to purpose stories. In fact, we've for a lot of us, we've been through certain experiences that propelled us to have to figure out our own stuff or figure out a loved one's stuff, that usually conventional medicine can't. And by doing that, we develop some skills and tools that we find can really help others. And that definitely was what kind of got me into the health and fitness space in the first place, outside of like, listen, I mean, I'm a kid of the 80s, and
Same.
80s culture, 80s fitness culture with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone and Jean-Claude Van Damme. And
Hmm.
what boy growing up in the 80s didn't want to just walk around with their shirt off and be jacked and,
And
run
BGI
through the
Joe.
woods? Yeah, be G.I. Joe and pretend to be Predator and, all that kind of stuff. And so, like, listen, I mean, that was definitely me. But I coupled that as I was getting older with just a myriad of gut health issues,
Mm.
like I alluded to, that conventional medicine couldn't figure out, and I had sort of all this acid indigestion all the time, and IBS type symptoms, and I'd throw up all the time after meals. And it was kind of joked within my family is like, Benny has a sensitive stomach, and right, and for me, it just kind of was like normal. Like I didn't know otherwise until I started to realize, like, hey, this isn't normal. And it's not about just taking more Pepcid or Zantac. And, I got the endoscopy where they put the video down your camera down your throat and look at the lining of your stomach. And, there's really no diagnosis to speak of. And so
Mhm.
I learned kind of early on that I like had to take it into my own hands because I observed it just through my behaviors that my nutrition, like what I was eating, what I was not eating, was making a big impact in how I was feeling.
Mhm.
So putting all of those things together and then playing sports, through high school, I ended up I played a year of college football at Lewis and Clark College in
Mhm.
Oregon, and then ended up transferring to U of A and played rugby at U of A, and sort of continued to reinforce the health and fitness, mindset as I was exploring kind of like what was going on with me. And it really wasn't until, and then, like I said, I migrated up to Arizona State for a master's degree in exercise and wellness with an emphasis in strength and conditioning. So it
Mhm.
was really in the trenches working with athletes. I was interning with the Arizona Cardinals, but there still was like this underlying kind of like gastrointestinal stuff going on. And I was very confident with all of the exercise related stuff and all the programming and working with athletes and general population, but I knew that there was a component of the nutrition that was going to be the biggest driver, not just for me, but also for the people that I was working with. And so that's when I finished school, I just started to study everything I possibly could. And I started to learn from mentors all over the country and the world, and Paul Chek and Charles Poliquin, and started to study functional medicine from a guy named Dr. Dan Kalish in San Francisco. And it was through that, Christina, that I finally like got a diagnosis, realized I had this nasty bacterial infection called H. pylori,
Mhm.
and was able to heal it naturally. And so that was like the origin of, why my company is called Body Systems and how we focus on the whole body, and understanding that there's, just such an integrative approach to how we look at health in general, which I know you agree with, not just the mindset, obviously, physiologically, emotionally, and what we need to do from a holistic standpoint to kind of move the needle.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I feel that so many people have experienced where you've been. And like you said, traditional medicine isn't able to help or doesn't believe that there is another option. And when we can incorporate other modalities, whether that's, as you said, like homeopathic medicine or Ayurvedic medicine, we have learned, and I would say probably within the past, I don't know, maybe you can help me with this, 10, 15 years, that there is another way. And we do need to look at it as a whole system. And I love that you can bring your own experience to your client. And I know for me with our clients, they often just feel so gaslit and they feel like they're
Mm.
silenced and they're minimized and they're invalidated. And you having that experience to say, I've been there, and obviously I have my system. I'm sure you have plenty of people you work with too, that someone's going to find the answer and we're going to help them do that. I love that. And I'm sure your clients themselves can really appreciate that authenticity that you bring because of your own story. So I really wanted to start with that. I actually, this is a funny story. I have been working this integrative health practitioner program through Dr. Stephen Cabral. Have you heard of him?
Yeah, of course. I know him. Yeah.
Okay, so I've been talking about this forever because it's a program that I purchased to do their certifications and everything. But I'm the queen of buying. I think you said too, like you're a lifelong learner. Like
Yeah.
the queen of like, oh, I want this training and this training. And then also I have my continuing education for my therapy degree.
Yeah.
So, or my license. So then I'm doing all of these other things. So I've had that damn training in my computer saved. And
Yeah.
I think I've gotten up to mold and toxins and I just get stuck there. So you're gonna like motivate me to finish this.
Yeah,
So
you
thank
have
you.
to. And that's funny. No, I know Dr. Cabral from a mastermind I was in probably 8 or 9 years ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, before he even started his functional medicine program. This was like right when he was starting his podcast and
Hmm.
starting to podcast every single day. And but yeah, a lot of the stuff that he teaches, like the functional medicine approach, was stuff that I was studying in like 2006 and 2007, which was really kind of when it just started to, I guess, become more popularized, become more recognized. But to that end, and what you're talking about as far as like the continuing education, I'm definitely of the same mindset around like I just want to absorb everything I possibly can, which was what propelled me to jump back into graduate school for a second master's degree in clinical nutrition. And this was in 2010. And you had asked about sort of my immune system crashing and just getting
Hmm.
totally wiped out. And that was part of the impetus, was because, over several years, I had worked to kind of heal the gut,
Hmm.
started my coaching practice, and obviously was coaching clients, but I knew like I just wanted to continue to explore nutrition and understanding just how significant of a role it plays in the outcomes that my clients were getting. And so I dove back into graduate school, and we had a 6 month old. I think at the time, my first daughter was 6 months, and we had another one who was, shortly thereafter.
Hmm.
So I was in graduate school with two under two, running a personal training business, and my wife who was very successful in kind of corporate America prior to our second. She worked up until she delivered our second daughter, Ava,
Hmm.
and then she stopped working. And so all of a sudden I was hit with like financial responsibilities, right? My other
Right.
graduate degree, running a personal training business, the hours that you personal train, like I'm doing like 5
6
a.m.
a.m. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like 5 a.m. sessions and 5 and 6 p.m. sessions, and
Hmm.
these lulls in the middle of the day where I'm trying to get in my workouts, and I was eating super quote unquote clean and
Hmm.
crushing myself in the gym. And it just was like the straw that broke the camel's back. And I realized, I'm like, what am I doing here? I was crushing myself and not, being a good representation of kind of or practicing what I was preaching around managing health and fitness.
And that's an interesting statement that you make there because I think on paper, people would look at you in that capacity and be like, wow, he can do it all. He's
Mm,
Superman, And yes, you were doing it all, but not what we don't realize as a society is that our nervous system only has so much capacity, right? And when our load is beyond that capacity, that's where we end up having autoimmune issues, health
yeah.
issues. Our immune system in general is just lower, and we just push it off and think, I don't know where your brain was at the time, maybe because where you were in your clinical studies that you saw the red flags to be red flags, but for so many individuals, they brush that off, right? And so as you're feeling more of the fatigue and you're realizing you're kind of burning yourself from both ends, what were some of the first changes that you decided to make during that time to help you kind of recalibrate, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, no, I literally was like crashing and burning. I mean, I had a practitioner friend do some blood work because I was feeling awful, and I was like starting to break out in hives and
Hmm.
was getting cold sores all the time. And it felt, just exhausted nonstop. And we got the labs back and she's like, dude, these are really bad. Like,
Mhm.
and I'm,
You were
uh,
young too, right?
yeah, I
I mean, we're
mean,
still young,
what,
but
late
yeah.
30, maybe about 30, and in, like visually in great shape, but
Hmm.
under the hood was just absolute mess. And I realized I had like Epstein-Barr, and so my
Hmm.
my immune system was trashed, and this sort of latent viral infection, and so that was like realizing, okay, I can't keep quote unquote grinding, and I have to
Hmm.
focus on getting better sleep and focus on the quality of my nutrition. And it's not just all about calories in, calories out. It's like right? The actual micronutrients of the food that I'm consuming, and
Hmm.
actually listening to my body, and not doing 2-a-day training sessions, or
Same.
just pushing through. And I think that this is a common theme that I see with clients, especially when we look at, and especially perhaps for your listeners, and certainly for my clients and listeners, is when we look at social media and we look at quote unquote influencers, or people even who just have physiques, for example,
Hmm.
that we aspire to look like, right? We make these assumptions that they have it all figured out just because they look a certain way. And I've been in the fitness industry for a very long time, over 20 years now.
Hmm.
I know a lot of the people in the space. I've been to seminars with a lot of people in the space. I've been in masterminds with a lot of people in the space. And I can say with 100% certainty that every single person has their own issues.
Hmm.
Did you know that 95% of people that lose weight gain it back and then some? 95%. And the interesting thing, what is my hair doing? The interesting thing is that the wellness community continues to use the same behavioral change approach that causes that 95%. It's crazy. So I thought, well, what about the 5%? What is it that the 5% of people are doing so differently that they keep the weight off and create permanent habits? Well, what I've learned is it's actually not that difficult. It's actually quite different than everything diet culture and the health and wellness community want you to think. Because obviously, if you know this, you won't have to spend money with them. But I am so kind, and because I have access to trainings that people in the wellness industry do not have access to, I'm going to share this with you. In my 8-week collective, I am teaching you the 5 habits that the most successful individuals do who lose weight and keep it off permanently. With these 5 habits, I'm also going to teach you the amount of flexibility necessary to be consistent with your routine. In this collective, we are going to learn your day-to-day, week-to-week routines, understanding your time, your attention, your schedule. Then you're going to receive a custom roadmap on how to execute those habits. It's all written out for you. Over this time, you're also going to work on the failure narratives that cause self-sabotage. Because what we're learning, it's not reward, reward, reward. It's actually reduce failure in the brain. And over the course of the 8-week period, not only are you going to have more energy, you're going to feel better in your clothes, you're going to have a strong, consistent routine, you're going to end food noise, and you're going to end or reframe at minimum the self-sabotage you experience. So if you're tired of this same old runaround that the fitness industry is trying to tell you works, but we know obviously doesn't, comment Bloom and I will send you information.
Right? And you could probably agree with me, whether it's mental issues, physical issues, emotional issues, whether it's orthorexia,
Hmm.
food aversions, just relationship issues because of their lifestyle,
Like,
whether they don't actually practice what they preach,
mhm.
and so I think that's just a really important component of not believing in everything you see, or being very cautious about the way that you interpret what you see on social media.
Right. I idolize these individuals. And I'm so glad you said this because you're right. I mean, from my perspective, as someone who's worked in all levels of care of eating disorder treatment and has worked with individuals with body dysmorphia, disordered eating, all of that, the prevalence of, and obviously my specialty is mental health, prevalence of disordered eating and even budding eating disorders, orthorexia being the main one. The prevalence of that in our space is incredibly high. If you haven't
Yeah.
followed her, Michelle Carroll has been on this show multiple times. She's out of Edinburgh, and her entire PhD is studying our space and
Mm.
the prevalence of disordered eating and eating disorders in our space.
It's
So
super screwed up. I
we
mean,
really are.
and that's why you asked, just like, I just think it's so important about our personal experiences and bringing our personal experiences to the table, because I think it's fundamental in being able to effectively communicate with our clients and show our clients that we're actually real people,
Right.
and they don't have to do what we do, but also to see that they also don't have to do the extreme things that they think they need to do, or that they perceive that people in our space do to look the way that they look. And the reality is, like, either they've been doing it a lot longer than you have, they're genetically
Mhm.
endowed to just look a certain way, to respond better to training stimulus or to certain, dietary guidelines, and or some combination of the above, or there's drugs involved, or
Right.
again, like all of the above.
Mhm.
And that's the reality of
That's the
things.
reality, right? Well, and that comes to one of my questions was like, obviously, you and I grew up in this industry around the same time. I actually received my master's degree this same year. I started group fit instruction, and that was over 15 years ago. So, back in the day, even us as trainers, like we had our own idea of like what healthy was and how we help people lose weight and all of that. How has, with your own experience, not only with yourself and your clients, how has that shifted over this 20-year career that you've had?
Yeah, well, I mentioned it's a great question. And I mentioned how, I had all those gut issues, and in healing those, I had to get very diligent about my nutrition. And so this was like 2007,
Hmm.
eliminated all gluten, all dairy, all sugar, all alcohol
Hmm.
for a period of time, almost like an elimination diet, as I was introducing supplementation and working to repair and restore gut health and gut lining, and the integrity of the gut lining, and take down the inflammation, and obviously get rid of the H. pylori. But by doing that, speaking of orthorexia, I just got very, very, because I started to feel so much better, look so much better, respond so much better, I got very dogmatic about that approach, sort of this
Yeah.
quote unquote eat clean, maybe it was kind of a little bit, I guess maybe right around the time of paleo, maybe a little bit before, but almost this paleo, like, only eat whole foods, and it's my way or the highway with my clients, right? And it was very detrimental to my clients' results in terms of, you get a small percentage of clients who are robots who will do what you want them to do, and they get great
Right.
results. But the vast
Formative
majority of people,
clients.
again, and I'm in my late 20s, and I don't have any responsibilities. We don't have any kids yet. We're
Mhm.
maybe just about to get married. And so I'm super duper strict with my nutrition, obnoxiously so, right? And I knew everything. Epitome of
Didn't we all?
Dunning-Kruger, right?
Yes.
And it was through that I really realized, well, I realized that I couldn't even sustain sort of the dogma that I was reinforcing or trying to reinforce. I would be eat clean all week long, and be perfect, quote unquote perfect, and do all of the right things. And then come the weekend, I would crash and burn, like every single weekend. And I couldn't wait, for like Friday afternoon, when we used to live up on Scottsdale Road in Mayo, where the Whole Foods is,
Hmm.
like back when it was brand new. We lived in some apartments right back there. And so we had this beautiful Whole Foods, and I would get home from training clients and would be like, go over to Whole Foods and get a bottle of wine, or maybe a six pack of beer, and get a
Hmm.
pizza, and whatever, like,
Yeah.
and it would just be this onslaught. And then I would kind of show back up at work on Monday morning feeling, like my tail between my legs, like, who am I? Who is this guy?
Hmm.
Feeling like an imposter, right? Because I'm telling my clients that they have to do all of these things and I can't even do it myself. And so I realized that there was just this massive disconnect
Right.
between what I thought I needed to do and what really worked for people. And it was sort of me starting to learn these principles and
Mhm.
how to not be all or nothing and how to not have this dichotomous black or white mindset and how we really, if we really want to be successful, and this is what I teach with my clients, is like we need unconditional permission. We need to learn to live in
Love
the
that.
gray. We need to know that we can have our cake and eat it too, but also take ownership and responsibility about how much cake we're eating.
I
And
love
if I
that.
can
I love all of
teach,
that.
right, if I can teach clients how to give themselves permission to do that and stop feeling like they're a failure and stop feeling the guilt and the shame and the regret that comes from
Mhm.
being quote unquote good or quote unquote bad, right? This is your world,
Yep, I'm
then
right here.
they're going to be a lot more likely to be consistent and make better decisions. And
Right.
that's was like the impetus for all of that.
Okay. I like gold, gold, gold. First and foremost, for those of you listening, I want you to hear what Ben said. Like, there are still providers out there, trainers that say my way or the highway. You do it my way, or you do it to yourself. And a lot of clients will do this to themselves. So they'll follow someone and the person will do the what I eat in a day,
Yeah.
and they'll have like a certain diet that they follow, and they're very convincing, and they'll pull some bullshit research that says, you can't have this or that, whatever. And the person will attempt to do the diet because you're the professional or they are the professional, and they end up, life gets in the way or
Right.
their brain gets in the way, which we can talk about,
Mm,
and they end up, getting off track, as we call it. But to them, as you said, it is failure. It is failure. And every time that we fail at something, our brain actually pulls back our motivation to do it again because failure
mm,
doesn't feel good.
hmm.
And so being able to learn that early on is so important because, as you had said, for yourself, you even recognize, and I think this is such an important step in the process of, I do feel like an imposter because actually I am being an imposter because I can't actually sustain what I'm doing. And again, it goes back to our conversation from the get of like our own experience and being able to humble yourself and say, this isn't actually working for me, let alone my clients, and being able to come back to your true self and what works for you. Now, obviously, with a medical condition, you do have to make some exchanges or maybe have some restrictions, but realizing really is that every single person is going to have their own set of wants and needs and habits that work for them. And when we can teach them that and help learn them and help them really learn themselves, we neutralize failure. And you said unconditional permission. I love that statement. Like, it doesn't have to, when we give performative tasks and habits to individuals, I say this to them all the time, you're leasing those habits. I own them.
Mm,
I want them to own them. I don't want to fucking
hmm.
own them. I have my habits, right? And they
Hmm.
work for me. I am 43. I'm married. I have two dogs. I do not have children. I have a sauna, cold plunge, gym, podcast studio at my house. My life is going to be a lot different than yours, who is
Hmm.
married, has three children, has a business. It's just going to be different. So I love that you said that because that is chef's kiss, amazing. And really, again, I love having people like you on this show because I feel like we are against this monster of that
Totally.
space and that
Totally.
culture of do it my way or you're a failure, you're a piece of shit, you're work harder, How do you handle that? How, because obviously I feel like we're on the same page. How do
I
you
mean, I think
handle?
this is part of it is this. It's just getting the word out and being authentic to what we know actually works, having been in the space and getting client results. It's really hard to compete against the machine where the most outlandish, polarizing, and dogmatic information is going to get the most views, right? And so it's like we have this competition as health practitioners or the ones that want to get the biggest exposure, it becomes this competition of like who can make the most ridiculous claims or spin things in with these sound bites in a way where it's going to again be perceived as something that's very dogmatic or zealotous. It's just like only eat red meat. Okay. Like, or just don't eat anything and like just drink water. It's
Right.
like either you're fasting or you're carnivore. It's like that's the only,
Right.
apparently those are the only things that work.
Oh my goodness.
And we know, listen, I mean, human physiology is fantastically malleable,
Mhm.
and the human metabolism to the degree that we've evolved over, millennia and thrived through feast and famine
Right.
and so many different exposures and stressors that I just think we still don't know even a portion or fraction, right, of truly how the human body thrives.
Mhm.
So, anyways, the way I handle it is just kind of one person at a time in ways that, like we alluded to, is like, well, we're going to figure out the way that works best for you. At the
Mhm.
same time, with the clients that we work with, the men and women that I work with, and I know you work with a lot of hard charging women. I work with a lot of hard charging guys, but at the same, at the end of the day, they come in with a mentality of like, tell me what to do and I'll do it. Right. But
Mhm.
we also know like, okay, but that's not actually what you need. We need to help shift that mindset to help you take autonomy and ownership and feel empowered to make decisions that are right for you and not white knuckle your way to success, perhaps how you've done in business.
Right.
And it's breaking that barrier down for them
Mhm.
and challenging them, but equally supporting them to learn how to make those decisions. And that comes with education. It comes with
Mhm.
developing skills, like you said, building new habits and behaviors. And so the process systematically is first awareness. It's like, let's help you just understand what you're currently doing and why it objectively matters,
Right.
right? It's like if you just understand, it's just like financial statement. It's just like a budget. It's just like an expense sheet. It's just like a list of KPIs for your business.
Mhm.
It's like objectively, we need to know what's coming in, what's going out, how all of it's adding up to the bottom line. If we can
Mhm.
show you that, well, now you're informed,
Right.
right? And now you can make some better decisions based on the information that you have, whether it's drinking less beer, whether
Mhm.
it's eating more protein, whether it's consuming less fat, whether it's snacking less in between meals, whether it's managing your eating window, whether
Right.
it's sleeping more, whatever. Like that's right. That's exactly what we want and need. And from there, then we can really work to kind of establish like, okay, well, what's the low hanging fruit relative to your goals, your commitment level, your readiness for change, your level of education and knowledge,
Mhm.
what you're willing to commit to, your social support system, because all of those matter more than the X's and O's of just tell me what to eat and how to exercise.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when what you're talking about, the metric aspect of it, because again, as we're talking about, the machine, it's oftentimes like if you don't hit these metrics, then you're wrong or bad. And the way that I'm hearing you say it is like, no, these metrics are learning you and how food and the types of food, when you eat, how you eat, and then all these other variables, how do they affect where you're at and where you want to go? And it's not good, bad, it is. It's data, it's variables, and I love that kind of reframe, if you will, of using what some use as black or white and finding that gray area where people can utilize whether it's tracking food as more of an educational tool than I mean, you use the word performative again, performative success tool. And even then that shift in the mindset is going to help them feel like, oh, I'm learning. Like I'm
Mm,
learning myself. And especially someone who is in, these high leadership positions or they're in the hustle and grind mentality, you could even tweak it to a spreadsheet, right? Or,
yeah,
through my husband is a financial analyst, and I hear all
yeah,
these create what is it, pro formas and EBITDAs and this and
right.
that,
Yeah,
like, all of this these metrics that he has to make good decisions, and you're doing that for these individuals, and then of course, like you said, giving them the autonomy to take control of their lives. But one thing I did want to say is, and I'm curious your input on this, a lot of our high achievers, our go-getters, a big part of their identity is achievement, as if, they were seen, they're heard, they're praised by what they can produce, and that productivity and that hitting the goals and hitting the mark. And oftentimes for me, obviously, as a clinician and incorporating this into my practice, a big part is separating that and saying, look, like
Hmm.
here, you're not a human doing, you're a human being. And I want you to learn how to be. What is your experience? Because I know you do a lot with the mindset and behavioral change. So we have the habits and the behaviors and the education, but how do you work with them on kind of separating performance and productivity with taking care of themselves?
It's a really good question and an interesting thought process, and I'll be interested to hear what you do with your clients. But the way I think about it is very much from a sort of reflectionary standpoint, like a weekly standpoint of like when we consider consider what are achievements for, your goals or for this process, right? I think we have to reframe perhaps what that actually means. We're not just talking about scale weight. We're not just talking about a body fat percentage in most circumstances,
Mhm.
right? We're kind of looking at like, well, what are all the behaviors and skills that we're going to develop that we can also consider as achievement that are directly going to contribute to the outcome that we're looking for?
Mhm.
And so from a win standpoint, we break it down much more consistently or frequently
Love it.
as far as like, I call it game film quite a lot. It's like on a weekly basis,
That's
when we
great.
look back at the game film from the previous week, right? What are our observations? Like, what are our wins? What did we do well from the
Mm-hmm.
past week? And how can we acknowledge, right, those quote unquote wins,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whereas we wouldn't normally think about it that way. Like the scale isn't moving, so I must be doing something wrong. Or
Right.
my body fat didn't change this week, so I must be doing something wrong. Well, that's obviously not how human physiology works,
Right.
right? In other words, if I can reward behaviors, say, listen, if it's reasonable to assume that if I can consistently practice these behaviors that we agreed upon that are going to contribute to the goal, that ultimately we're going to start to see the needle move in these different ways. So we
Yeah.
look at game film, we acknowledge what did I do well, where do I need to, work or improvement,
Mm-hmm.
how am I going to make those improvements? Is it realistic for us to do that? And is that something that I'm actively committing to this week? So
Mm-hmm.
then week over week over week, it becomes, all right, I have a game plan,
Yeah.
right? I have the protocol that we're following, whether it's, specific dedicated items or whether it's, when I travel, here's the decisions that I'm making. Here's how much alcohol I'm consuming or not consuming.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the conversations and communication I'm going to have with the people who might make it more challenging or provide potential obstacles to the goals that I have. So I think it's just kind of breaking it down in a way where we can acknowledge those wins more consistently as opposed to making it so finite or objective. Does
Correct.
that make
Absolutely.
sense?
Yes. So, have you ever read anything by Dr. Kyra Bobanay?
No.
She wrote the book Unstoppable Brain. She has a podcast with Maya Bialik on her, or she has an episode of Maya Bialik, and what you're describing is her iterative mindset method. Now, the funny part about me discovering this is my psychological curriculum that all my clients go through is called the mindset method. And I'm currently creating a training program for coaches. And I was just looking to see if anyone had trademarked that. And unfortunately, some have. So I need to figure out a new name. Anyway, and I come up on a research paper. And I have luckily, because of my credentials, I was able to do a continuing education with her. And we were the first clinical class to be trained on this iterative mindset. And it's exactly what you're talking about. And it's exactly how I run my program of being able to say, and I love the game film, it's experiment, assess, tweak.
Mm.
and the client working from their knowledge, and you and the client being co-pilots. It's not, I'm
Yes,
going to tell you what to do. We're co-pilots because when
100%.
you use the word autonomy, we want to give them the agency and the accountability to themselves and get them to a place where we say, and this is a really hard one for clients to answer, what would you do if no one was watching? What would you keep doing? If
Mm.
no one was on the other side of this computer, or, you have your coach you go to, what would you keep doing? We want to find that. We want to find what works for you.
Yes.
And then the barriers that you have, we want to tweak them. Because, like you're saying, what we're doing is we're constantly kind of, the goal is not this, like you said, objective, like singular thing. It is creating a lifestyle that is who you are, and not even who you are, because even that can be, people can hear that and be very rigid, kind of like we were when we started doing this. It's like,
Yeah.
no, I do 2 a days. I only eat, I have
Right.
to have 170 grams of protein. No. Not only who I am, but I flexibility in that. And I can have multiple ways of getting to the same outcomes, or I can be flexible, but really my goal is to be consistent. And so if my goal is to be consistent and I am doing that with a multitude of options that work for me, then I'm always successful,
Yeah.
right?
I think it's this level of self-efficacy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And intrinsic motivation that's developed,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes,
Right.
yes.
And it's something that's interesting. It's timely because I teach kinesiology 101 in this semester at ASU. And we were
Amazing.
just talking about that in terms of like exercise psychology and sports psychology and health psychology and the level of self-efficacy that's present and developed, through sport and through exercise and the different types and how people resonate, have more self-efficacy to different things, runners versus someone who does yoga and different
Mm-hmm.
athletes and different sports and the contributions to self-esteem and basically just this overall level of global self-esteem, especially in conjunction with other facets of life. But point being, it's really, yeah, it's what can we do and how can we help them develop their own level of self-efficacy around these behaviors. And it's one of the things that I love about oftentimes when clients come to me or perhaps come to you, they've been through a myriad of different dieting methodologies. And that's why I'm not one to bash any of these things because I do believe that they all have their place. And I use many of these in my practice depending on where a client is in their journey and what their goals are and what we're experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're observational, introspective about it, we can also say and help them realize that that wasn't a failure for you. That was actually a beautiful learning opportunity. When you did keto, remember when you did keto those 3 times, right? And you were confident that the next time would work better until you crashed and burned because it didn't fit with your real life and your responsibilities. But point being, you also realize that these foods worked well. These foods, you didn't feel good when you ate these foods. So what if we start to intertwine some of that into your decision-making process in conjunction with the fact that when you tried intermittent fasting, and then remember when you did, I don't know,
Plant-based
some
diet
other,
or something.
right, some other
Yeah.
random diet. So can we agree that there's certain components to each of those that work really well for you? Okay, well, what might it look like for us to take elements of that and then start to put it in place? And like you said, autonomy. And so it's what's necessary, but it's also what makes people the most uncomfortable and obviously challenged to growth, which is what we want.
Yeah. Can't, discomfort creates change, and people have to realize that. And I personally will come in and say, this is going to be uncomfortable. I'm going to have you doing things that throughout your entire life you've pushed against because they've kept you safe. They've made things predictable for you. We're
Mm,
actually going to do the opposite of that. So you would ask kind of how I approach my clients very similarly from a behavioral change standpoint, but I do get to add in understanding where a lot of their struggles come from. The mindset method, as it's titled now, is actually reflection. We do a lot of reflecting on how we were seen and heard, where we were praised, our subconscious thoughts and our patterns in our past that we've constantly been pulled towards. So you're talking about the person who's done the different diets. I'm looking at it too of, well, what was going on in your mindset? And there are reflections that my clients do on a weekly basis. It's about a 9 to 10 week process. And that allows me to learn them. And then we can create kind of these agreements on how, for example, this is silly, but I have a new client that started this week, and she and I have an ego emoji, is what we call it. And anytime her ego, and obviously through my assessments, I have a good understanding of when the ego is in charge. She sends me the emoji. That's it. Because it's so hard for her to ask for help in that moment. She wants to convince herself that it's a burden on me. I don't want to hear it, or
Totally.
I'm going to judge her. So I was like,
Right.
cool, totally get that. Been there too. Just throw that emoji in there. I don't know exactly where we need. I don't know exactly where we need to go, but I know that you need help. And there's like little stuff like that. So I do get to layer in that aspect of coaching with my clinical experience.
I appreciate what I really appreciate about that I think I've observed is so beneficial for people that again goes well beyond the X's and O's of calorie intake and energy output is learning how to be a better communicator, how to ask better questions, how to have and be okay asking for support and using the support that you have invested in and not feeling like it's a burden to the coach who you actively hired to help you do the things that you couldn't do
Right.
on your own, right?
Right.
And not feeling like you're a failure for actually asking for the help, right? Again, and that's just such a skill in and of itself is being okay and learning how to effectively communicate. And then I
Hmm.
also think as coaches, it's for us to learn how to effectively communicate with different types of clients that we work with and create that synergy so that they can feel effectively supported through all the ups and downs that invariably come through this journey.
It's so true. And the ability to effectively communicate creates space that for the first time, while most of your life you've felt judgment or this need to perform for
Mhm.
others and please others, that this is a space that this is an unbiased territory. This is where you practice that vulnerability. Practice it here. You co-regulate with me. Like and co-regulation is very much a therapeutic term, but I think even from a coach's perspective, like just having a place for a person to be their most vulnerable, because what we do is vulnerable. You think progress photos and weight and looking at how
Yeah.
people eat. I mean, that's almost just, to me, it feels very like naked. You're seeing almost every bit of me, and really you see what I mask to everyone else. You
Mhm.
see the truth of it. And when coaches can have that grace and compassion and recognizing the human experience of what we're doing, and not just, like you said, making it very black or white, and I forget the word you used, but
Dichotomous.
yes, where we can move away from that. I mean, I have clients, and I'm sure you do too, I guarantee this, like, that have been with me for a good amount of time. I mean, they've lost weight, they've maintained their weight, but they stay simply for even, I think, just the relationship,
Yeah.
and it's wonderful. I mean, it really makes you feel good. So I'm just loving this. You know what's funny, everyone listening? We have a whole list of questions that I put together
Exactly.
that we answered but never asked, which is so freaking awesome. I absolutely love that. I do want to ask, I don't want to ask. I'm doing this selfishly, so my clients will hear this. This is kind of off topic, more around nutrition. I reposted your post on Whole Foods
Oh,
versus
thanks.
proteins, powders, and
Yeah.
bars.
Yeah.
For everyone listening out there, so that I don't have to repeat myself, can you explain to our audience why we want them eating specifically whole proteins sources or having whole foods?
Yeah. Well, thanks for reposting. It's
You're welcome.
so why would we want to eat more whole foods as opposed to, protein bars and protein shakes and protein chips and protein pancakes and protein waffles and protein yogurt and what else is there?
Protein
But you know what?
cupcakes,
Listen,
Pop Tarts,
yeah, I
water.
mean,
That's a
listen,
new one. Did you say
protein,
water
high
already?
protein oatmeal, you name it, because protein is, high protein is the new marketing
It's on its world
term.
tour, is what I say.
Used to be low fat, then it was low carb, now it's high protein. But listen, one of the things that because we're so indoctrinated now with this sort of high protein narrative, which by the way is not a bad thing.
Mm.
We definitely want to be consuming an appreciable amount of protein relative to our total calorie intake. And I
Mm-hmm.
think if we can be consuming around 30 to 35% of our calories from protein, which is not as much as a lot of people would like to believe or think, but it is a lot relative to what a lot of people consume. And
Mm-hmm.
so, what often happens in the early stages of a nutrition plan is people can justify, well, okay, I know I need more protein, but we're busy and maybe a lot of us, we don't like to cook, or, we eat out frequently and you get, you know, measly portions of protein when we eat out. So we turn to those convenient sources, those high
Mm-hmm.
processed, highly refined sources of protein, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But when we're relying on those over the long term, I've seen it be problematic in that, one, it doesn't help us improve our behaviors and skills around planning and preparation and actually getting enough nutrition from the food that we're consuming, because not it's, our nutrition is not just about macronutrients. It's not just about protein, carbs, and fats. It's not just about calories. It's about what those calories are made up of,
Right.
right? The essential amino acids, the vitamins, the minerals,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when we're eating a lot of highly processed food, although some of it might be
Healthy.
fortified, we're not necessarily getting those things. We're not necessarily getting the fiber that we need. And then again, we're just one of the biggest things that we experience, or what I'll say this, one of the most beneficial things that we can develop is how we manage our hunger and cravings,
Mm-hmm.
and what we call satiety
Mm-hmm.
through our nutrition.
Right.
And when we're eating real food that has high amounts of protein, that has fiber, that has water, that keeps us satiated, we're less likely to snack between meals, that we're more likely to get more nutrition, and we're less likely to overconsume calories,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But when we eat calorically dense Franken foods, as I call them, protein bars, chips, shakes, it doesn't take up a lot of space. It's very quickly and easily digested. There's not a whole heck of a lot of nutritional value. And we're left usually a lot hungrier or craving more, especially because they have artificial sweeteners. And so I'm kind of taking this a little bit longer and more long-winded than I would like, but the point therein is that anything we can do to consume more real foods is going to help us get more nutrition. It's going to help us manage our hunger more effectively, and ultimately, it's going to help us create better body composition change, better energy, preserve more lean muscle tissue over the long haul.
Mm-hmm.
And that's obviously what most people want.
Right.
And so making the shift from just relying on dairy foods or bars and shakes to more real food can do all of that.
Yeah. Brilliantly said. And I think it needed the space that you gave it. I know again, because our clients are traveling and things like that, yes, there's a time and place. I always say it's the exception, it's not the rule. And from what I've understood too, is a lot of these drinks and things, they're not actually doing what like a protein, like the idea of what protein does. Because the way I understand it is they're so processed down that our body actually kind of rids some of those amino acids and doesn't use them accurate as efficiently as it would properly breaking down
Yeah, I mean,
chicken, if you
here's
will.
what I think and what I know, but we have to consider, like, food consumption is a sacred process, and it's this when we talk about this holistic approach, going back to the beginning, we our digestion begins in the brain. Our
Hmm.
digestion begins the second we start to think about the food that we want to consume. And then we start salivating and we're producing these salivary enzymes that are going to start to, and then we consume the food and we chew the food and we what's called mastication. And as we're chewing the food, we're mixing in the salivary enzymes that are literally breaking down the components of the food so that when we swallow it, then it can be exposed to the hydrochloric acid in the stomach, right? And further break down the proteins and the carbs. And then it's going to start to work its way further down the road where we can release bile and break down the dietary fats and absorb and assimilate the nutrients. And again, it's this very complex process, but when we barely chew, when we're just drinking liquids with these nutrients, it doesn't require any of this digestive process. It happens in an instant, right? And so we're bypassing so many of these physiological components that I believe are paramount in just health,
Absolutely.
in our relationship with food,
Hmm.
in helping us manage hunger and cravings,
Yes.
in right again creating satiety and regulating those hormones like leptin and ghrelin that
Right.
send those signals to the brain that we've had enough to eat. And so we're really cheating the system in many, many ways.
Hmm.
And so oftentimes for clients, I've posted videos if someone goes to, on why steak for breakfast is such a superfood, right? And
Me.
it's for
I
all
will
of
eat
these
steak and
reasons.
eggs
It's the best.
every day. I
It's the
go to,
best.
whenever I go, I don't know why, but in Vegas specifically, there's a place at the Caesars and they have a crab Benedict.
Is it the palm?
It's, I'm not gonna remember the name. No, I'm not, it's not Caesar. I'm sorry, it's at Bellagio. It's like
Oh,
right
okay.
in front of the water. Anyway, and then they have a side of a 4 ounce fillet. Oh,
Yeah.
I will go
Yeah,
there
it's
right
legit.
now. I will drive after this to have that. Anyways,
But the point
steak for,
is, it's
yes.
like, listen, when you eat red meat, especially earlier in the day, and I learned this from one of my mentors, and it reigns supreme. But your kids have attention issues, energy imbalances. Feed them animal protein earlier on in the day, and not cereal and juice and sugar, and they will be stable and they will be calm, and they will think clearly. And by the way, the same thing is true for adults in terms of the neurotransmitters like dopamine that it produces and the neural drive and the blood sugar regulation. And so these are all of the reasons why we are meant to eat real food. We're meant to chew our food and break it down, and to say nothing of the social components and community components that come with food consumption.
Right.
And it's meant to be an enjoyable experience. And again, we're just trying to bypass it based on calories or just based on marketing slogans and claims. And, so that's like
Right.
if
Love
we can
it.
get, you can't not feel better and look better by building your meals from high protein, high fiber, nutrient dense foods.
Hmm.
And
Right.
so it's as crazy as it sounds, like this is what we do is
Right.
just teach people how to start to eat more real foods more consistently and stop eating so much processed food so consistently.
Right.
And if we
Even
did
if it's
nothing
labeled
else, and it
healthy.
sounds simple, right? Or it sounds easy, but it sounds simple, but it's certainly not easy. If we did nothing else, then that would make a huge difference.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Few things that you said there I want to reiterate is number one, don't be afraid of your hunger cues. I feel like with the onset of GLP-1s, when people get off, they're so afraid to feel hungry again. It's like, no, this is this. I say to them all the time, I'm like, are you afraid to feel like you have to pee? Because it's a similar communication skill. Like your body is needing to do something that it biologically needs to do, but you're trying to like push off hunger. And by doing that, you're creating, even more struggles with your relationship with food, with your obviously ability to know, like to be in alignment and attunement is the word I was looking for with your hunger and fullness cues and being able to eat more whole foods and being able to eat enough. What we're also doing, you talked about dopamine, and serotonin and our neurotransmitters in general. We know by research when we eat enough, when we're eating whole foods, our body is satisfied and our brain doesn't have to initiate these, we'll call them defense mechanisms
Mhm.
to get what it needs. Meaning, we talk about food noise. This is a hot topic. Food noise is a direct response to the body not getting what it needs. The body will start obsessing over food. And it doesn't sound like give me food, but it'll start to like pay attention to the brownie commercial on the TV, and you'll start to like think about food more and analyze food more. And it's really just a response to not eating enough and not eating enough whole foods. Because people will say, well, I don't
Yeah.
understand. Like I'm hitting my protein target, but they're hitting it in powders and bars.
Yeah, totally.
And they're like, I thought that would make my food noise go away. I'm like, well, no, because your body's not receiving what it needs to be satiated. And therefore that defense comes up and says, or that feedback loop comes up and says, I need more, I need more, I need more. And then when I start eating, my leptin's like, yeah, I'm gonna chill out for a little bit
Right.
because I'm gonna actually have you overeat because I don't know when I'm actually gonna get what my body is looking for again.
Yeah.
So then we feel out of control with food. It's just such a vicious cycle. And what you said at the end there is it's so easily
Mhm.
resolved
Right.
by eating more whole foods. So glad everyone repeat that, rewind and listen to that again.
Well,
I
it's going to
know,
be interesting to see what happens with GLPs. And, you hit the nail on the head with the hunger component. I mean, listen, if you want to lose fat, you better learn to be hungry. And that's it. Like that's how, I mean, because you're in a very small way starving yourself, and that's because calories matter, and this is physics in action. And so, but what's beautiful about that is it's such a skill to develop, to understand that it's not an emergency to be hungry. It's like,
right,
hey, I'm hungry and that's okay.
right.
Right? It's not my blood sugar dropping
Hmm.
necessarily. It's not, again, it's not an emergency. I'm going to be fine. But how do we determine? And one of the things we talk about is like, where are you on the hunger spectrum?
Right.
It's like, I'm just a little bit hungry, or I'm starting to get a lot hungrier, or like, on a scale 1 to 10, and 10 is like, I will eat my child. I'm so hungry versus, I'm like a 6 or 7 and I'm ready to eat, but I'm okay. The
Hmm.
hangry mode. So yes, GLPs are masking that, and it's going to be very problematic. And it is very problematic, evidence from the research, because people are gaining back their weight very quickly.
And
And that's its own
metabolically in a
issue.
worse off place than they
Correct.
started to.
In and of itself. Yeah, that's problematic.
I want to be respectful of your time. We've already gone over. So do you have to go? I'll cut
No, I'm
this
good
out.
for, I mean, I'm good for a few minutes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So I agree with you. And I feel like we could probably have another conversation on that alone. I feel like GLP-1s, while yes, a tool, they're kind of like AI and they're making us dumber in our ability to understand our bodies. But that's just me. So
No, it's not just you though. Like, they are helping a lot of people, which is great.
Mhm. So is AI.
But right, but we have to take responsibility for how the human metabolism works
Hmm.
and the invariable pushback that's going to occur. And that is occurring. Again, we have, brand new research, meta-analysis. So this is research of the research,
Right.
right? Of multiple studies that are looking at what happens when people come off the drugs and the rate of change in terms of how quickly they gain their weight back. And so I think it has a lot to do with overdosing, the prescriptions being well above and beyond what people actually need, the massive suppression, obviously, of appetite and delayed gastric emptying. And
Hmm.
yes, they are beneficial to a degree, but we have to pay attention to what's happening. And so if you're on those drugs or you're considering going on those drugs, all of the things that we're talking about previously around building behaviors and skills around your nutrition intake and eating
Hmm.
enough protein and learning how to spread your meals out throughout the day and how to not snack in between meals. We haven't even talked about strength training and the importance of lean muscle tissue, and we could probably save that for another conversation. But,
Mhm.
if you're not doing those things, then you're going to be a lot more likely to have that metabolic rebound. And I've got a number of clients that I'm working with where, they came in at the tail end of losing a lot of weight, and now they're like, "Oh shit, what am I going to do?"
Right.
Because I don't want to keep taking this. I don't feel great taking it. I've lost a lot of weight, but I also have lost muscle mass.
Mhm.
I'm glad that I weigh less. I'm a lot healthier, but I don't love my body composition, and I want to actually like look better,
Right.
just not
Same.
just look
Yeah.
smaller. And how do I put on some muscle through this process? Like, yeah, you got to start to eat more, and we got to titrate down on the medication. And so let's figure out how to do that. And
Yeah.
it should be interesting.
It will be. It will be. If you if you could email me that meta-analysis, I could probably find it. But I'm
Yeah,
a
I'll send
nerd
it over.
too. Okay, I want to do a couple mindset moment, quick, rapid questions. How do you define inner confidence in a few words?
Inner confidence, I think I would say, yeah, I mean, it's having the ability and the ability to do the things that you want to do,
Hmm.
to feel comfortable doing the things that you want to do, and not feel impeded by a lack of ability.
Yeah, I love that. Uh, It's I'm going to do it. I'm going to figure it out. And when we do that, and we like we talked about earlier, and sit through discomfort of like what works, what doesn't work for me, you're right. That's what confidence, that's how we build it, you know? I always tell people the confidence isn't going to be there. Like it's going to come over time. I love that.
Well, you have to build it. And the only
Right.
way you're going to build it is by challenging yourself and developing the skills and right and that
Mhm.
level of growth that comes from failing. It's like, yeah, I suck at this now, but I'll be good at it at some point.
Right. Right. I say that all the time. It's like this is a practice. Even eating food is and eating whole foods is going to be a practice. I love that. What's one mindset shift that has transformed your health? So mindset specific that's transformed your approach to health.
As we discussed, I mean, I just really think it's not getting, I think it's just giving yourself this level of unconditional permission
Mhm.
that you can do you,
Yes.
right? And you need to be okay with that because what I do may not be right for you. And what another, person on social media does to look great might not be right for you. And so you just like, you have to give yourself permission to own your choices, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I just think listen, it's something I still deal with, and I'm sure you still deal with
Yep.
in some way, shape, or form. And it's like we're going through this journey too, by the way, and I'm not perfect, and I have plenty of issues, and I don't think it ever gets easy. It just the challenges change.
Right.
And but I'm okay with that. And I'm almost embracing it, right? Because it
Mhm.
means I'm also giving myself permission to get better, to learn as we
Mhm.
go, so that I can help more people in the process through those lessons.
Absolutely. Compassion and grace for yourself is one of the kindest things you can do, and that permission. Last question, what's one book or resource that has greatly influenced you or that you want to share with our audience?
One of the books that this might be cheesy, but the book that like initially influenced, I don't know why I'm thinking about this, but the book that initially influenced me to take control of my health it's called The Way of the Peaceful Warrior.
Hmm.
Are you familiar with it?
No.
The author is Dan, and I'm spacing on his
Here,
last name,
I'll
but
look it up.
and it's been years and years since I read it. But I read it in high school when I was, dealing with all of these gut issues, and it talks about sort of this
Oh, Dan
Olympic
Millman.
Dan Millman, thank you.
Yes.
And he kind of talks about the student at Cal who's training for in gymnastics for the Olympics, and he undergoes this whole journey with a man he meets at a gas station named Socrates. And Socrates is sort of this kind of magical being that teaches him how to eat and how to exercise and how to train his mindset to, make improvements and stop being so egocentric and sort of be accepting of like he's not the end all be all, and the only way he's going to get better is sort of by accepting these things. And I think it challenged my thought process at that early stage of life, but also reinforced like how we exercise, how we challenge ourselves, how we think, right? What we consume, how much that actually matters.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah.
quick,
Love it.
easy read, but it
We're
was
the Socrates, Ben.
right,
I love it.
right.
Before I let you go, let everyone know where they can follow you and find you.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're on, probably most active on Instagram at Body Systems Coaching.
Hmm.
Our website's body, I'm sure you'll have the links down below, but bodysystems.com. I also have a podcast that actually, Christina, I'd love to have you on. It's called the Smart Nutrition Made Simple Show on all streaming podcast platforms.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's it.
Love it. Love it. I have a feeling that you're going to get an invite back. So hopefully
Would
you
love
will
to.
take that.
We got to
Amazing.
talk muscle mass, strength, the importance of strength training. We
Mhm.
also need to talk about physiological and metabolic changes as we age. So I
Absolutely.
think that there's an opportunity there.
Absolutely. And I absolutely, I mean, consider it done. Thank you
Great.
guys.
Well, I look forward to it.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening. Obviously, this is one of those episodes that sharing with your friends, whether it's the girl chat or the school pickup, that you'll want to share it. So please do that for us. If you haven't already, make sure that you're following wherever you're listening to this podcast. And if you're watching our beautiful faces on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you're interested, as Ben said, we will have all of his links below so you can learn more because we didn't even get in about the program itself, but I feel like you actually described what you do in a non-salesy way, pitchy way. So that's great. But if you're interested, all that information is below. And other than that, I will let you be on your way, reminding you that what you say in your mind, you see in the mirror. Bye-bye.